The sound of rain against the window was the only thing that filled the quiet house. Emma stood in the kitchen, her hands resting on the cool marble counter, staring into the soft flicker of a candle she had lit out of habit. The house had once been full of voices, laughter, footsteps, arguments over dinner, but now was mostly silence. It had been 2 years since Mark passed away. 2 years since the laughter faded, since she'd learned to make coffee for one. Since the warmth of companionship had turned into the chill of empty rooms. Yet she still woke up every morning the same way, opening the blinds, boiling water, telling herself to keep moving forward. The only part of her old life that remained was Alex, Mark's son from his first marriage. He was 19 now, tall and quiet, with his father's blue eyes and that same habit of staring at the floor when deep in thought. He had been living with her since Mark's passing, though living felt like too strong a word for what they shared. They occupied the same space but spoke in fragments. Dinner's ready. I'll be late. Thanks. It's nothing more. It wasn't his fault. Grief had a way of building invisible walls, and Alex's were made of stone. Still, Emma tried. She remembered the boy who used to laugh at her terrible cooking, who would follow Mark into the garage just to hand him tools he didn't know the names of. Now that boy was gone, replaced by someone quieter, older than his years, weighed down by something she couldn't reach. Some nights, she would hear him moving around his room, restless. Other nights, she'd hear music playing softly, the same old songs Mark loved. And sometimes, in those quiet hours, she'd whisper to herself, "He misses him too." That thought always made her heart ache in equal parts sorrow and tenderness. The rain picked up, tapping harder on the glass. Emma turned off the stove and carried her tea to the living room. The clock ticked gently. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon, the candle she'd bought because it reminded her of Christmas mornings when Mark would wake up early to make pancakes. She sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The photos on the mantel caught her eye, Mark smiling in the sunlight, Alex as a boy on his shoulders, and one of all three of them on a beach trip years ago. She had forgotten someone had taken that picture. It was the last vacation before Mark's illness began. Emma reached out and touched the frame. Her reflection in the glass looked softer than she remembered. Older, yes, but still holding on to that quiet spark of hope she refused to let die. Hope for healing, for connection, for something to feel real again. Just then, the front door creaked open. Emma turned, startled. Alex walked in, his hoodie damp from the rain. He froze when he saw her, a little surprised to find her still awake. "You're up late," Kay said, brushing water off his sleeves. "So are you," she replied gently, smiling a little. "Busy day." He shrugged, kicking off his shoes. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." She wanted to say more, to ask if he'd eaten, if he was okay. He still had those nightmares she used to hear through the walls, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just nodded and watched as he disappeared down the hallway toward his room. When the door clicked shut, the silence returned. Emma stared into her tea. Every small interaction with Alex left her with the same lingering feeling that there was something fragile between them. Something neither of them knew how to name. It wasn't distance exactly. It was more like a shared wound, one that time hadn't quite healed. She leaned back against the couch and whispered softly, "You're not alone, Alex. You never were." But of course, he couldn't hear her. Upstairs, Alex sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. The rain outside reminded him of that night, the night they'd rushed Mark to the hospital. He'd promised his father he'd take care of Emma, but he hadn't known how. He wasn't good with words, and grief had made them strangers in their own home. He wanted to talk to her, to tell her he was trying, that he noticed how hard she worked to keep things together. But every time he looked at her, he saw the pain in her eyes, and it mirrored his own too closely. So instead, he said nothing. Downstairs, Emma turned off the light and went to her room. She paused in the hallway, glancing toward Alex's door. A thin line of light still glowed beneath it. She almost knocked, but then stopped herself. Some spaces, she thought, needed to be given time to open on their own. The house settled into quiet again. The rain a steady heartbeat outside as Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts drifted to the boy down the hall. Her stepson, who had once been full of laughter and now carried silence like armor. She didn't know how to reach him anymore, but she knew she had to try because love. She thought, isn't just about being there when things are easy. It's about standing in the rain when someone else can't move forward alone. And as she closed her eyes, the sound of rain grew softer, like a lullaby for two lonely hearts under one roof, both waiting for the courage to speak again. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving behind the soft shimmer of dew on the garden leaves. Emma stood by the kitchen window, watching sunlight filter through the glass. The world outside looked freshly washed, alive again. She poured herself a cup of coffee, the same brand Mark used to buy. The scent brought memories. Lazy Sunday mornings, Alex running around the yard with a kite, Mark sitting at the table reading the newspaper. They had been an odd little family then, imperfect, stitched together by love and laughter. Emma smiled faintly at the thought. Back then, Alex had been 10, all wild hair and endless questions. He'd call her Em instead of Emma, and every time she baked something, even halfway edible, he'd cheer as though she'd won a medal. She remembered one particular afternoon, a spring day thick with sunshine. She had tried to make chocolate chip cookies for the first time. They had burned at the edges, stuck to the tray, and looked more like pebbles than cookies. She'd been embarrassed until Alex, with his gap-toothed grin, declared, "These are the best cookies ever, Em," and ate two before she could stop him. Mark had laughed so hard that day, the sound echoing through the kitchen like music. Those were the moments Emma carried in her heart. Small, ordinary things that had somehow meant everything. Now, years later, that same boy was a quiet young man who barely looked her in the eye. As she stood there, lost in thought, the sound of footsteps behind her made her turn. Alex entered, his hair still damp from a shower, wearing a simple gray t-shirt. "Morning," he said, his voice soft but polite. "Morning," Emma replied, smiling gently. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." He nodded and poured himself a cup, sitting at the table. For a few moments, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just full of things unsaid. "Do you remember?" Emma began hesitantly. "The cookies I burned that one time. The ones you said were amazing." Alex looked up, surprised. Then, for the first time in a long while, he smiled. Really smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I think I still have a scar on my tongue from those." Emma laughed, covering her mouth. "I told you not to eat them. I was 10. I didn't listen to anyone." The laughter faded into a warm quiet. For a fleeting moment, Emma saw the boy he used to be, open, innocent, full of light. "Dad used to tease you about those cookies for weeks," Alex said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "He said you'd get better one day. And you did." Her chest tightened. "I tried. For both of you." He nodded, looking down. "You were good to him, Em. Better than he ever said out loud." She blinked, her throat thick. "Thank you." It had been so long since anyone had spoken about Mark with that kind of honesty. Most people avoided the topic, afraid to bring back her pain. But hearing his name from Alex's lips didn't hurt. It comforted her. She took a slow breath. "He loved you so much, you know? More than anything." Alex's hands tightened around his cup. "I know. I just wish I'd told him I loved him more. I thought there'd be time." Emma reached across the table, resting her hand near his. Not touching, just close enough for him to feel her presence. "We all think that," she said quietly. "Time feels endless until it isn't." The words hung between them, soft and heavy. Outside, a few birds darted across the garden fence, chirping as if the world hadn't lost anyone at all. After a while, Alex broke the silence. "I used to think about those days a lot. The three of us. The road trips, the way Dad would sing off-key just to make you laugh." Emma smiled through a sheen of tears. "He was awful at it. But it worked," Alex said. They both chuckled, and for that small stretch of time, the air in the kitchen felt lighter, freer, like a window had been opened in a stuffy room. Then, just as quickly, the moment dimmed again. Alex looked down at the table. I'm sorry if I've been distant. I just didn't know how to be around you after he was gone." Emma's voice softened. "You don't have to apologize, Alex. We were both grieving. We still are." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw the quiet strength behind her tired eyes. "You've been holding everything together all this time," he said. "I should have helped more." She shook her head gently. "You helped just by being here. You may not see it, but your presence kept me going. This house would have felt unbearably empty without you." For a second, neither spoke. The morning light painted both their faces gold. There was something sacred about that silence, not the kind that pushed people apart, but the kind that held them together. Finally, Emma rose to refill her cup. "You know," she said softly, "you—" The week moved quietly, stitched together by ordinary routines. Emma working at the small-town library, Alex at the hardware store down the road. Their conversations remained gentle, brief, yet something had changed since that morning in the kitchen. The air between them no longer carried the same heaviness. It felt as if a door had quietly opened, letting in a sliver of light. But sometimes healing comes disguised as something unexpected. That Saturday morning, the house hummed with stillness. Emma decided to tackle the attic, a place she hadn't dared to enter since Mark's passing. The old wooden stairs creaked beneath her feet as she climbed, flashlight in hand. Dust floated in the air like memories made visible. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling, labeled in Mark's neat handwriting Christmas. Camping gear, Alex, school stuff. She paused at that one, her fingers tracing the faded letters. Curiosity pulled her closer. Inside were pieces of a childhood she had almost forgotten. Little League trophies, notebooks covered in doodles, and old baseball gloves still faintly smelling of leather. Beneath it all lay a worn photo album. She brushed the dust off and sat on an old chest, opening it carefully page after page. The pictures unfolded, Mark teaching Alex to ride a bike, their first fishing trip, a summer barbecue where Emma stood in the background, laughing as smoke from the grill curled around her hair. Her eyes lingered on one photo. Alex, no older than 10, holding a cake with frosting smeared across his cheek while she knelt beside him, smiling. They looked happy, genuinely, simply happy. A lump rose in her throat. She closed the album gently, whispering to herself, "You grew up so fast, Alex." Just then, a sudden noise, a sharp thud, echoed from downstairs. Emma startled, nearly dropping the flashlight. She hurried down the stairs, heart thumping. "Alex?" She called out. No answer. She turned the corner into the hallway and froze. Water was spilling out from under the bathroom door. "Alex?" Panic surged through her. She pushed the door open, and there he was, sitting on the floor beside the half-filled tub, clutching his side and breathing hard. His face was pale, his shirt damp. "Emma," he tried to say, but his voice came out weak. She knelt beside him instantly. "What happened?" He gave a shaky laugh, trying to downplay it. "Guess I slipped. The faucet handle broke off when I turned it. I'm fine. Just," he winced as he tried to move. Emma's heart raced. She could see the pain etched across his expression. "You're not fine," she said firmly. "Let me help you." Before he could argue, she grabbed a towel and turned off the water. The floor was slick, and she nearly slipped herself as she steadied him by the arm. "Take it slow," she murmured. Deep breaths. Alex tried to laugh again, but his breath caught. "This is embarrassing." "Getting hurt isn't embarrassing," she said, her voice soft but certain. "It just means you're human." He looked up at her then, eyes wide, vulnerable, searching for something he couldn't quite name. For a moment, the world went quiet. Only the steady rhythm of dripping water filled the space. Emma helped him to his feet, guiding him to sit on the closed toilet seat. She grabbed a small towel and gently pressed it against the bruise forming along his ribs. "Hold that there," she said. He obeyed, though his hands trembled slightly. "You really didn't have to." "I did," she interrupted gently, "because that's what family does." Something in her tone, the firmness, the care, seemed to reach him in a way words never had before. He looked at her, eyes glistening. You still call us family, he said quietly. Emma met his gaze. We never stopped being one. The words landed between them like a heartbeat. After a moment, she helped him stand again, making sure he could walk. Come on, she said softly. You need to rest. I'll make you some tea. As they moved down the hallway, the faint scent of soap and rain trailed behind them. The scene was simple, but something inside both of them had shifted. Something tender, unspoken yet unmistakably real. Later, when Alex sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, Emma brought him tea and placed a small ice pack beside him. You're lucky it's just a bruise, she said. You need to be more careful. He nodded sheepishly. Guess I owe you one. You owe me nothing, she replied with a small smile. Just promise me you'll let me help when you need it. He hesitated, then said softly, That's the hardest thing for me, letting people in. I know, she said. It was hard for me too. After your father. Her voice trailed off. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The silence carried the rest. He looked at her then, really looked, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. She wasn't just the woman who kept the house running, or the one who made sure he had dinner. She was someone who had carried loss, loneliness, and love all at once, and still found the strength to care for him. He swallowed hard. Thank you, Emma, for everything. She smiled softly, her eyes warm. You don't have to thank me, Alex. Just heal. That's all I want. Outside, the rain began again, gentle this time. More like a whisper than a storm. Emma sat in the armchair across from him, the soft glow of the lamp filling the room. For a while, they said nothing, but the quiet felt different now. It wasn't emptiness, it was connection, and somewhere between the flicker of light and the rhythm of rain, Emma realized the truth of it all. Sometimes fate doesn't bring people together in grand, cinematic ways. Sometimes it happens in the simplest moments. A fall, a helping hand, a cup of tea shared in silence. And in that small, ordinary miracle, both Emma and Alex took another step toward healing, not just from grief, but from the quiet distance that had kept them apart for too long that evening. The house was quiet except for the occasional hum of the heater. Emma sat at the dining table, a notebook open before her, though she wasn't really writing. Her mind was elsewhere, on Alex, on the way he had looked at her earlier. Vulnerable, trusting, and somehow searching. Upstairs, Alex lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The bruise on his side had already started to fade, but the memory of Emma's hands, steady, gentle, caring, lingered. He realized with an unfamiliar clarity that he had taken her presence for granted all these years. He had assumed she would always be there, silent, keeping the household together. But seeing her in the moment of that small emergency had stirred something he couldn't name. Neither of them spoke of it. They didn't need to. The weight of the unspoken had a language all its own, subtle glances, soft smiles, and the way they lingered near each other. Hesitant yet drawn together, Emma closed her notebook and stood, stretching. She peeked into the hallway, expecting Alex to be buried in his phone or lost in a video game. Instead, he was by the window, looking out at the rain-slicked streets. His expression was unreadable, thoughtful. She stepped closer. You're quiet tonight. He turned, startled, as though caught in a private moment. Just thinking, he said, his voice low. Emma nodded. I've been thinking too, she admitted, though she didn't elaborate. Words felt fragile, incapable of capturing the emotions tumbling inside her. They stood there, side by side, neither moving, as though the mere proximity was both comforting and terrifying. Emma felt a flutter she hadn't acknowledged in years, a reminder of what it meant to truly care for someone beyond surface affection. Alex felt it too, a warmth that was not just familial, but human, deep and consuming in its quiet intensity. Finally, Alex broke the silence. Do you ever miss the way things used to be? Emma turned to him, studying his face. The boy who had been so full of energy was now a young man shaped by grief and responsibility. Every day, she said softly. But I also see how far we've come. And sometimes the present is more beautiful than the past if we let it be. He looked down, twisting his fingers together. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Scared of saying the wrong thing, of making things awkward, scared of losing this. Emma's heart ached at his honesty. She took a step closer, the soft carpet muffling her movement. Alex, she said, her voice gentle. We're not going to lose this. Whatever this is, it's real. And real things grow stronger when we nurture them, even in silence. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. I don't want to mess it up, he whispered. You won't, she replied, a small, encouraging smile spreading across her face. Sometimes love, family, care, connection doesn't need words. It needs patience, understanding, presence. He nodded, as if trying to memorize every word, every nuance. I guess I didn't realize how much I needed that, he said. Your presence. Your guidance. Your care. Emma's eyes softened. And I didn't realize how much I needed you too. Not just Alex, the stepson, but Alex, the young man with thoughts, fears, and a heart that's bigger than he lets on. They remained there in quiet reflection, standing just a few feet apart, yet closer than they had ever been. Each heartbeat seemed amplified in the stillness of the room. Why is it so hard to say things sometimes? Alex asked almost to himself. Because the things worth saying are often the most fragile, Emma answered. They take courage. They take trust. He nodded slowly. I trust you, he said, his voice firmer now, carrying a weight that surprised even him. And I trust you, she replied, a warm sincerity in her eyes that went beyond words, reaching deep into the shared history between them. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Rain tapped lightly against the window pane, the street lamp outside casting a golden glow across their faces. In that suspended silence, both Emma and Alex felt something shift. The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the floor. Emma stood at the counter, carefully preparing breakfast, though her mind was elsewhere. The quiet of the house felt heavier than usual, as if it were waiting for something, for a shift, a revelation. A word that had been held back too long. Alex appeared in the doorway, stretching, his eyes still carrying a shadow from the previous week's accident. He hesitated, as if unsure whether to speak or retreat. Emma noticed immediately. She set the plate down gently, then walked toward him. Good morning, she said softly. Sleep well. He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. I did. But she could see it, the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightness in his jaw. Something was brewing inside him, something he had held back for far too long, Alex. She began, her voice steady but gentle. I feel like there's something you want to say. Something you haven't yet. He froze. Then, slowly, as if pulling the words out from somewhere deep, he spoke. I'm scared, he admitted. His voice was quiet, vulnerable, almost a whisper. Scared of saying the wrong thing. Scared of disappointing you? Or myself? Emma stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. You could never disappoint me. Not like that. I've seen your heart, Alex. I've seen your care. That's what matters. He swallowed hard. It's more than that, he said, his eyes finally meeting hers. I've been holding back. Feelings I didn't understand myself. I was afraid they'd change everything. That if I said anything, it would make things awkward or wrong. Emma's chest tightened, a mix of anticipation and understanding washing over her. She had sensed this moment approaching, yet it was still more powerful than she had imagined. She kept her voice steady. You can say it, Alex. You're safe. Whatever it is, you can trust me. He took a deep breath, trembling slightly. I care about you more than I thought I could. Not just because you take care of me. Not just because you're my stepmom. I care about you, Emma. And it scares me because I don't want to lose the closeness we've built. I don't want to ruin it. Kayla felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, not from sorrow, but from relief and a deep swell of emotion she had kept buried herself. She reached out, gently touching his hand. Alex, I've felt the same way. I didn't know how to say it or if it was even okay to feel this, but it's been there quietly for a long time. I care about you deeply, truly, and I've wanted to say it, but I needed to make sure you were ready." He blinked, stunned by the honesty. "You feel the same?" She nodded, her voice soft but unwavering. "Yes, and I promise you, nothing will ruin this. Our bond is built on trust, love, and understanding. That's stronger than fear." For a moment, the world outside seemed to pause. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, warming the space between them. Alex's hand trembled in hers, but he didn't pull away. The hesitation, the longing, the months of unspoken emotion, it all found release in that single acknowledgement. "I've been afraid for so long," Alex admitted, voice shaking. "Afraid that if I said anything, I'd lose the one person I've depended on the most." Emma squeezed his hand gently. "You won't lose me, Alex. Not now, not ever. We'll navigate this together, slowly, carefully. You don't have to face any of it alone." He exhaled, a sound of relief, of tension finally loosening its grip. I didn't want to be selfish. I didn't want to make it about me." "Alex," she said, her eyes soft, steady, and full of emotion, "this isn't selfish. Being honest about your feelings is brave. It's human, and it brings us closer, not farther apart." A faint smile broke across his face, the first genuine one he had shown in weeks. "I've never felt this understood before," he admitted. "Like someone actually sees me." Emma nodded, her own smile quiet and tender. "I see you, Alex, all of you. The boy I raised, the young man you've become, the heart that's been waiting to speak. I see all of it, and I'm here." The room felt lighter, brighter, somehow more alive. The distance that had lingered between them for so long, built of grief, hesitation, and fear, had finally begun to dissolve. In its place was something stronger, mutual understanding, trust, and the beginning of a deeper emotional connection. They sat together at the kitchen table, hands still lightly touching, sharing a quiet moment that spoke louder than any words could. Outside, the sunlight reflected off the windows, casting a soft glow on their faces. "I'm glad we can finally say this," Alex said softly. Emma nodded. "Me too. It's never too late to speak the truth, Alex, and now that we have, we can move forward together, honestly and without fear." He smiled again, this time steadier, more confident. "Together," he repeated, and in that small kitchen, under the warm morning light, they both understood something profound, that sometimes the greatest courage is simply speaking the truth. And that truth, heartfelt, honest, and deeply human, could transform even the quietest of relationships into something extraordinary. For the first time in years, the bond between Emma and Alex felt unshakable. Not because of circumstance, not because of obligation, but because of choice, a choice to care, to trust, and to allow their hearts to be known. And in that moment, everything changed. The late afternoon sun poured through the living room window, filling the house with a golden glow. Emma sat in her favorite armchair, a warm cup of tea in her hands, and watched Alex move around the room, tidying up after their small breakfast together. There was a quiet energy now, a rhythm that felt natural and unforced. The rhythm of two people learning to live and heal together. Alex paused, glancing at her, and smiled. It was soft, genuine, and filled with a warmth that reached the corners of her heart. He had changed in the past weeks, more relaxed, more open, more willing to share his thoughts and emotions without hesitation. And Emma had changed too. She realized that caring for him, seeing him grow, and finally speaking her own truth had given her a renewed sense of purpose. "You know," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I used to think I had to face everything on my own. That asking for help made me weak." Emma shook her head gently, smiling. "It doesn't. Being human means needing others sometimes. Strength comes from recognizing that and leaning on those who love you." He nodded, as if memorizing her words. Then, after a pause, he added softly, "I'm glad I don't have to face it alone anymore." Her heart swelled. "Neither do I, Alex. We have each other now. That's what matters." They spent the afternoon reminiscing, laughing quietly over old memories, the burned cookies, the fishing trips, and the little accidents that had once seemed so monumental. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary. Every word, every glance, every shared silence reaffirmed the bond that had grown between them as the sun began to set. Painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma and Alex moved to the porch. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and freshly washed leaves. They stood side by side, watching the horizon. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if things had been different?" Emma asked, her voice thoughtful. Alex glanced at her. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember, we're here now. And this, whatever this is between us, is more important than regrets." Emma nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep in her chest. They didn't need to imagine a different past or dream of a different future. The present moment, shared and honest, was enough. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and Alex reached out, taking her hand gently. Not the tentative touch of hesitation, but a steady, grounding presence. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" she asked, though she already knew. "For letting me be me. For letting me speak. For letting me feel. Everything I've been holding back." Emma squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening with quiet emotion. "And thank you for trusting me. That's all I've ever wanted, for us to understand each other completely and honestly." They stood there in silence for a while, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. It was peaceful, serene, and full of unspoken promises. Neither of them needed to fill the space with words. The trust, the care, and the love between them spoke louder than any sentence could. Later, as they moved back inside, Emma prepared a simple dinner. They worked together in the kitchen, laughing over small mishaps and enjoying the ordinary intimacy of shared routines. It was the kind of connection that didn't demand grand gestures, just the presence of someone who truly cared. After dinner, they sat together on the couch, sipping tea and watching the rain begin again. Outside, the world continued on in its usual rhythm, but inside, time seemed suspended. They had crossed the threshold from grief and hesitation into understanding and emotional closeness. Alex leaned back, his hand resting on the arm of the couch near hers. "I think I'm starting to understand what Dad meant," he said softly. "About family, about caring for people. It's not just about blood or duty. It's about presence. It's about showing up." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "Exactly. It's about being there, even when it's hard. Even when it scares you." He nodded, eyes bright with quiet gratitude. "I'm glad you're here. I don't know what I would have done without you." "And I'm glad you're here too," Emma replied, her voice steady and full of sincerity. "You've given me more than you know. Hope, trust, and a reason to keep going. You've reminded me what it means to care deeply again." The evening wound down slowly. They shared a gentle, quiet dinner, cleared the dishes tea,